As students across England, Wales and Northern Ireland start to receive their A-level results, the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, says the grading system will return to pre-pandemic levels in order to keep up with international standards, but will not impact on university places.
The total number of students accepted onto UK degree courses has fallen 2.6% on the same point last year, with 414,940 taking up places so far. That's according to initial UCAS figures.
Well, joining us now is the founder of Education and Skills, Tom Richmond. Hello to you, Tom. So we've seen a substantial drop in the top grades combined, A and the A stars, down from 36% to 26%, but they're still above pre-pandemic levels. The big question is, are A-levels past their sell-by date?
I hope not. They are very well respected qualifications. They've been around since 1951. So I think there is still good reason to look at them and say they've got a lot of credibility. But you're right, we've had a very turbulent few years. You mentioned the number of A's and A stars last year. If you went back a couple of years, 44% of the grades that were awarded to students were A's and A stars. And that really put a huge strain on universities and employers to figure out which students actually had done better than others. This year, finally, after some very turbulent years, we have gone back to something which looks pretty similar, like you say, not identical, but pretty similar to where we were in 2019. And I think most people in the education profession, parents, teachers and students, are hoping that as we move forward now, we don't have anything like the disruption we had during the pandemic.
Is it a little bit unfair, though, that students in Wales and Northern Ireland, they're not suffering from this so-called grade deflation? So that doesn't seem right to me.
Yes, they've taken a slightly different journey. What Wales and Northern Ireland are doing is that they are going back to pre-pandemic grading levels, but they're doing it a bit more slowly. So they've decided to take an extra year that England hasn't taken. So in England, we are pretty much back to pre-pandemic levels, but in Wales and Northern Ireland, we are still slightly above them. That should sort itself out by next year. But the fact that we've got a different system in Scotland again with a different set of exams, it does mean that I can imagine some students will be looking at this system going, did I get a fair deal for me? And of course, as the grades were higher last year and the grades were a lot higher 2 years ago, then I think I can understand why parents and students will look at that and say, potentially it doesn't quite feel right. But ultimately, we do need a grading system for any exams to be able to separate out those who did better and those who did worse. We need to get back to that pre-pandemic system pretty soon.
So, Tom, a lot of students today will feel they've been marked down and they've suffered unfairly compared to during the pandemic when people were marked up. I mean, in 2021, 45% were achieving A or A star. That's grade super inflation. But my question to you again is, when we see such rampant fluctuation in the top grades, does it not say that the whole thing is just absolutely chaotic and we need a new system?
Well, it certainly was chaotic. I mean, I'm a former teacher myself, and if I'd been doing that job a couple of years ago, I would have been slightly alarmed when the government turned around to all the teachers in schools and colleges across the country and said, it's up to you as teachers to decide what grades your students should get. That caused a lot of chaos, and it put a huge amount of pressure, I would say unfair pressure, on teachers to simply guess what their students would have got. And that's why I think the government and the exam regulator Ofqual are right to be working very hard over these past few years to get us back to a system where the grades were much more like where they were before the pandemic. So yes, I can understand there might be a slight sense of unfairness for today's students. But the important thing is, as I think we heard just a little while ago, that 4 in 5 students who've applied to university have got their first choice. That's actually slightly higher than it was pre-pandemic. So at that point, I'd say most students seem to be going on to the good destination for them, be it university or an apprenticeship or maybe even trying to get a job. So it looks like we might have come through the worst of it, but I wouldn't take away from how disruptive the last few years have been for teachers and students and parents.
What do you think of the Education Secretary's comments this morning? Gillian Keegan said that students in 10 years' time will not be asked about their A-level results. Now, she's coming in for a bit of criticism about this because some people think that actually this was really insensitive of her to say it on the day pupils get their results.
I was a bit surprised to hear it. Like you say, it was a slightly odd thing to say on the day where students get the results that actually it won't be too long before no one cares about them. As a small employer myself, I would absolutely look at someone's previous qualifications to say how well they've done, particularly if they've left A-levels or university just a few years ago. So I don't think it was really the right kind of positive message we want to be going out there. There are a lot of students who've done very well today, not just in A-levels, but in T-levels, also in BTECs and other vocational courses, and they deserve a lot of credit for a very hard couple of years. They haven't experienced a level of school closures that we saw a few years ago during the pandemic, so it has been a slightly different experience for them. But of course, the students who are sitting at A-levels and T-levels and vocational qualifications now had their GCSEs very badly disrupted, and so it hasn't been a very smooth years at all. So I think we really want to focus on the positive. I'm not sure we want to say to students right now it won't mean an awful lot in the future. I think for a lot of them it really will, and I think that's hopefully a very good thing.
OK, Tom Richmond, thanks for joining us today on the show.